Chapter 106. Of the founding of the city called of Our Lady of Peace, who was its founder, and of the road thence to the town of Plata. From the village of Tiahuanaco the road leads to Viacha, a distance of 7 leagues, leaving the villages called Cacayavire, Caquinhora, Malama, and others on the left hand, but it seems to me of little use to name them all. In the midst of them is the plain near another village called Warina, the place where, in the days that are past, there was a battle between Diego Centeno and Gonzalo Pizarro. It was a memorable event, as I shall show in the proper place, and many captains and knights of the king's party fell, fighting under the banner of the captain Diego Centeno, as well as some of those who were the accomplices of Gonzalo Pizarro. God was served by the rebel being the victor in this battle. To reach the city of La Paz, it is necessary to leave the royal road of the Incas, and to go to the village of Laxa. The city is a day's journey further on, built in the narrow part of a small valley formed by the mountains. It was founded in the most level part that could be selected, for the sake of the wood and water, of which there is much in this small valley, as the climate is warmer than on the plains of the Callao, which are higher, and where there are none of the things necessary for a large city. Notwithstanding all this, the citizens have thought of moving nearer to the great lake of Titicaca, between the villages of Huaqui and Tiahuanaco. Yet the city has remained in the valley of Chuquiapu where, in former years, great quantities of gold were taken out of the rich mines that are there. The Incas held this Chuquiapu in great estimation. Near it is the valley of Oyun, where they say that there is a great treasure hidden in a temple on the summit of a snowy mountain, but it cannot be found, nor is it known where it is. This city of La Paz was founded by the captain Alonso de Mendoza, in the name of the Emperor our Lord, when the licentiate Pedro de la Gasca was president of this kingdom, in the year of our redemption 1549. In the valley formed by the mountains, where the city is built, they raise a few trees, some maize, and the pulses and garden stuffs of Spain. The Spaniards are here well supplied with provisions and with fish from the lake, as well as with plenty of fruit from the warm valleys, where they also grow a great quantity of wheat, and breed goats, cows, and other animals. This city has very rugged and difficult approaches, being, as I have said, amongst the mountains. A small river of excellent water flows near it. The distance from this city of La Paz to the town of Plata, which is in the province of Charcas, is 90 leagues, a little more or less. I will now return to the royal road which I had left, and I have to say that it goes from Viacha to Hayo, where there were great buildings for the Incas. Beyond Hayo is Sica, to which point the province of Caloa extends. On both sides of these villages there are several more. 11 leagues beyond Sica is the village of Chronicle, which is built in a certain plain near the great province of Paria, which was highly esteemed by the Incas. The natives of this province of Paria are clothed like all the rest, and they wear, as an ornamental headdress, a small woolen cap. The chiefs were much reverenced by the Indians, and there were royal edifices and storehouses of the Incas, and a temple of the sun. Here there are a great many lofty tombs where they buried their dead. The villages of Indians subject to Paria are Caponota and many others, some near the lake, and some in different parts of the district. Beyond Paria are the villages of Pocota, Macha, Coracora, Maramuro, and near the Andes there are other provinces and great chiefs. Chapter 107. Of the founding of the town of Plata, which is situated in the province of Charcas. The noble and loyal town of Plata, a settlement of Spaniards in Chuquisaca, in the province of Charcas, is very famous throughout the kingdoms of Peru, and in other parts of the world, for the great treasure which, in these latter years, has been brought thence to Spain. This town is built in the best situation that could be found, in a place, as I have already said, which is called Chuquisaca. The climate is temperate, and well suited for the growth of fruit trees, vines, wheat and barley, and other things. At present the farms and lands are very valuable by reason of the rich mines that have been discovered at Potosi. Several rivers of very good water flow near, and many cows, mares, and goats are bred on the estates of the Spaniards. Some of the citizens of this town are among the richest and most prosperous people in the Indies, for in the years 1548 and 1549 a repartimiento belonging to the General Pedro de Hinojosa yielded a rent of more than 100,000 castellanos, and others yielded 80,000, some even more. The treasure that was found in those times was a wonderful thing. This town of Plata was settled and founded by the Captain Peranchers, in the name of His Majesty the Emperor and King, our Lord, the Adelantado Don Francisco Pizarro being his governor and Captain General of Peru, in the year 1538. Besides the villages already mentioned, this town has jurisdiction over Totora, Tapacari, Sipasipe, Cochabamba, the Carangs, Quilanca, Chayanta, Chaki, the Chichas, and many others, all very rich, and some, like the valley of Cochabamba, suited for the growth of wheat and maize, and for breeding cattle. Beyond this town is the province of Tucma, and the regions which were entered and discovered by the captains Felipe Gutierrez, Diego de Rojas, and Nicolas de Heredia, in which direction they discovered the river of La Plata, and reached the fortress which was built by Sebastian Cabota. Diego de Rojas died of a wound from an arrow poisoned with the herb used by the Indians, and afterwards Francisco de Mendoza seized Felipe Gutierrez, and obliged him to return to Peru. The same Francisco de Mendoza, when he returned to discover the river, was killed, together with his lieutenant Roy Sanchez de Hinojosa, by Nicolas de Heredia. Thus these parts were not entirely discovered, owing to the quarrels and feuds amongst the explorers, who returned to Peru. Here they met with Lope de Mendoza, the lieutenant of Diego Centeno, who was flying from the fury of Carbajal, Gonzalo Pizarro's captain, and joined him. They were defeated by the same Carbajal at a village called Picona, and soon afterwards Lope de Mendoza and Nicolas de Heredia fell into his power, and were put to death by him, with others. Further on is the government of Chile, of which Pedro de Valdivia is the governor, and other lands bordering on the strait which is called Magellan's. But as the affairs of Chile are important, and require a special narrative, I have only written what I saw between Urubá and Potosi, which is near this town, a road of such length that it must be, from the borders of Urubá to the further end of the town of Plata, a good 2,200 leagues, as I have already stated. I shall not go further in this my first part, except to say that the Indians subject to the town of Plata have the same customs as those of other parts. After they were conquered by the Incas, their villages were well ordered, and both men and women wore clothes. They worshipped the sun and other things, and had temples in which they performed their sacrifices. Many of them, such as the Charcas and Carangs, were very warlike. From this town captains and soldiers set out to serve His Majesty several times during the late wars, and they served loyally. With this I make an end of what I have to say touching the founding of the town of Plata. Chapter 108. Of the riches in Porco, and how there are large veins of silver near that town. It appears from what the Indians now say that, in the times when the kings Incas governed this kingdom of Peru, they obtained a great quantity of silver from some parts of this province of Charcas, and Indians were stationed there, who gave the metal to the overseers or their deputies. In the hill of Porco, which is near the town of Plata, there were mines out of which the Indians got silver for their lords. Much of the silver which was in the Temple of the Sun, called Curie Concha, is said to have been taken from this hill, and the Spaniards have also got a great deal out of it. In the present year a mine belonging to the captain Hernando Pizarro has been cleaned out, which was worth more than 200,000 pesos of gold every year. Antonio Alvarez, an inhabitant of this town, showed me, in the city of the kings, a little ore taken from this hill of Porco, which appeared to be nearly all silver. In short, Porco was in former times extremely rich, and is so still, and it may be believed that it always will be. In many neighboring hills, within the jurisdiction of this town of Plata, rich mines of gold and silver have been found. It may be held for certain that there is so much of this metal that if there were those to seek and extract it, they would get little less than, in the province of Biscay, they get iron. But as it must be got out by Indians, and as the country is too cold for Negroes, there are reasons enough why such great wealth is lost. I have also to say that in some parts of the district belonging to the town of Plata there are rivers which bring down very fine gold. In the Chichas, villages given in encomienda to Hernando Pizarro, and subject to this town, it is said that there are some silver mines, and great rivers rise in the Andes, near which, if gold mines were sought for, I hold that they would be found. Chapter 109. How they discovered the mines of Potosi, whence they have taken riches such as have never been seen or heard of in other times, and how, as the metal does not run, the Indians get it by the invention of the Huayras. The mines of Porco, and others in this kingdom, have been opened since the time of the Incas, when the veins whence they extract the metal were discovered, but those which they have found in the hill of Potosi, concerning which I now desire to write, were never worked until the year 1546. A Spaniard named Villarroel was searching for veins of metal with some Indians, when he came upon this wealth in a high hill, being the most beautiful and best situated in all that district. As the Indians call all hills and lofty eminences Potosi, it retained that name. Although Gonzalo Pizarro was then waging war against the viceroy, and the whole kingdom was troubled with this rebellion, the skirts of the hill were soon peopled, and many large houses were built. The Spaniards made their principal settlement in this place, the court of justice was removed to it, and the town of Plata was almost deserted. They discovered 5 very rich veins on the upper part of the hill, called the Rich Vein, the Vein of Tin, etc. This wealth became so famous, that Indians came from all parts to extract silver from the hill. The climate is cold, and there are no inhabited places in the vicinity. When the Spaniards had taken possession, they began to extract the silver, and he who had a mine gave each Indian who entered it a mark, or, If he was very rich, 2 marks every week. So many people came to work the mines, that the place appeared like a great city. That the greatness of these mines may be known, I will say what I saw in the year of our Lord 1549 in this place, when the licentiate Polo was corregidor of the town of Plata for his majesty. Every Saturday the metal was melted down in his house, and of the royal fifths there came to his majesty 30,000 or 25,000 pesos, and sometimes 40,000. And while extracting such immense wealth, that the fifth of the silver, which belonged to his majesty, came to more than 120,000 costellanos every month, they said there was little silver, and that the mines were not well worked. Yet this metal, which was brought to be melted, was only what belonged to the Christians, and not even all that, for a great deal was taken in pure bits and carried off, and it may be believed that the Indians took a great deal to their own homes. It may with truth be asserted that in no part of the world could so rich a hill be found, and that no prince received such profits and rents as this famous town of Plata. From the year 1548 to 1551 the royal fifths were valued at more than 3 millions of ducats, which is more than the Spaniards got from Atahualpa, and more than was found in the city of Cusco, when it was first occupied. It appears that the silver ore cannot be made to run by the bellows, nor can it be converted into silver by means of fire at Potosi. In Porco, and in other parts of the kingdom where they extract metal, they make great plates of silver, and the metal is purified and separated from the dross by fire, in which operation large bellows are used. But in Potosi, although this plan has been tried, it has never succeeded, and though great masters have endeavored to work with bellows, their diligence has availed them nothing. As a remedy may be found in this world for all evils, there has not been wanting an invention for extracting this metal, which is the strangest imaginable. The Indians, who were so ingenious, found that in some parts the silver could not be extracted with the aid of bellows, as was the case at Potosi. They, therefore, made certain molds of clay, in the shape of a flowerpot in Spain, with many air holes in all parts. Charcoal was put into these molds, with the metal on the top, and they were then placed on the part of the hill where the wind blew strongest, and thus the metal was extracted, which was then purified and refined with small bellows. In this manner all the metal that has been taken from the hill is extracted. The Indians go to the heights with the oars to extract the silver, and they call the molds guiras. In the night there are so many of them on all parts of the hill, that it looks like an illumination. When the wind is fresh they extract much silver, but when there is no wind they cannot by any means extract silver, so that, as the wind is profitable in the sea for navigating, it is so here for extracting silver. As the Indians have no overseers when they carry the metal up to the heights, it must be supposed that they have enriched themselves, and taken much silver to their own homes. This is the reason that Indians have come from all parts of the kingdom to this settlement of Potosi, to take advantage of the great opportunities offered for enriching themselves. Chapter 110. There was the richest market in the world at this hill of Potosi, at the time when these mines were prosperous. In all parts of this kingdom of Peru we who have traveled over it know that there are great fairs or markets, where the natives make their bargains. Among these the greatest and richest was formerly in the city of Cusco, for even in the time of the Spaniards its greatness was caused by the gold which was bought and sold there, and by the other things of all kinds that were sent into the city. But this market or fair at Cusco did not equal the superb one at Potosi where the traffic was so great that, among the Indians alone, without including Christians, 25 or 30,000 golden pesos exchanged hands daily. This is wonderful, and I believe that no fair in the world can be compared to it. I saw this fair several times, and it is held in a plain near the town. In one place there were cestos, bags, of coca, the most valuable product in these parts. In another place there were bales of cloth and fine rich shirtings. Here were heaps of maize, dried potatoes, and other provisions, there great quantities of the best meat in the country. This fair continued from early morning until dusk, and as these Indians got silver every day, and are fond of eating and treating, especially those who have intercourse with Spaniards, they all spent what they got, so that people assembled from all parts with provisions and other necessaries for their support. Many Spaniards became rich in this settlement of Potosi by merely employing 2 or 3 Indian women to traffic in this fair. Great numbers of Yanacuna, who are free Indians with the right of serving whom they please, flocked to the fair, and the prettiest girls from Cusco and all parts of the kingdom were to be met with at the fair. I observed that many frauds were committed, and that there was little truth spoken. The value of articles was not great, and cloths, linens, and hollands were sold almost as cheap as in Spain. Indeed, I saw things sold for so small a price, that they would have been considered cheap in Seville. Many men, possessed of great wealth, owing to their insatiable avarice, lost it by this traffic of buying and selling, some of whom fled to Chile, Tucumán, and other parts, from fear of their debts. There were also many disputes and lawsuits among the traffickers. The climate of Potosi is healthy, especially for the Indians, for few or none fall ill there. The silver is conveyed by the royal road to Cusco, or to the city of Arequipa, which is near the port of Quilca. Most of it is carried by sheep, without which it would be very difficult to travel in this kingdom, owing to the great distance between the cities, and the want of other beasts. Chapter 111. Of the sheep, Huanicas, and vicunas, which they have in most parts of the mountains of Peru. It appears to me that in no part of the world have sheep like those of the Indies been found or heard of. They are especially met with in this kingdom and in the government of Chile, as well as in some parts of the province of the Rio de la Plata. It may be that they will also be found in parts that are still unknown. These sheep are among the most excellent creatures that God has created, and the most useful. It would seem that the Divine Majesty took care to create these animals, that the people of this country might be able to live and sustain themselves, for by no other means could these Indians, I speak of the mountaineers of Peru, preserve their lives without these sheep, or others which would supply them with the same necessaries. In this chapter I shall relate how this is. In the valleys on the coast, and in other warm regions, the natives sow cotton, and make their clothes from it, so that they feel no want, because the cotton cloth is suitable for their climate. But in the mountainous parts, such as the Callao and Charcas, no tree will grow, and if the cotton was sown it would yield nothing, so that the natives, unless they obtained it by trading, could have no clothing. To supply this need, the giver of all good things, who is God our Lord, created such vast flocks of these animals which we call sheep, that, if the Spaniards had not diminished their number in the wars, there would be no possibility of counting them, such would have been their increase in all parts. But, as I have already said, the civil wars of the Spaniards have been like a great pestilence, both to the Indians and to their flocks. The natives call these sheep llamas, and the males urcos. Some are white, others black, and others gray. Some of them are as large as small donkeys, with long legs, broad bellies, and a neck of the length and shape of that of a camel. Their heads are large, like those of Spanish sheep. The flesh of these animals is very good when it is fat, and the lambs are better and more savory than those of Spain. The llamas are very tame, and carry 2 or 3 arrabas weight very well. Truly it is very pleasant to see the Indians of the Callao go forth with their beasts, and return with them to their homes in the evening, laden with fuel. They feed on the herbage of the plains, and when they complain they make a noise like the groaning of camels. There is another kind called Huanicas, of the same shape and appearance, but they are very large and wander over the plains in a wild state, running and jumping with such speed that the dog which could overtake them must be very swift. Besides these, there is another sort of llamas, called vicunas. These are more swift than the Huanicas, though smaller. They wander over the uninhabited wilds, and eat the herbage which God has created there. The wool of these vicunas is excellent, and finer than the wool of merino sheep in Spain. I know not whether cloth can be made from it, but the cloths that were made for the lords of this land are worth seeing. The flesh of these Huanicas and vicunas tastes like that of wild sheep, but it is good. In the city of La Paz I ate a dinner off one of these fat Huanicas, in the inn kept by the Captain Alonso de Mendoza, and it seemed to me to be the best I ever had in my life. There is yet another kind of tame llamas, which are called alpacas, but they are very ugly and woolly. They are of the shape of llamas, but smaller, and their lambs when young are very like those of Spain. Each of these llamas brings forth once in the year, and no more. Chapter 112. Of a tree called maye, and of other herbs and roots in this kingdom of Peru. When I wrote concerning the city of Guayaquil I treated of the sarsaparilla, an herb the value of which is well known to all who have visited those parts. In this place I propose to treat of the trees called mole, and of their uses. In the valleys and great forests of Peru there are many trees of different kinds, and with different uses, very few of which are like those of Spain. Some of them, such as the aguacates, guayabos, quemitos, and guavas bear fruits such as I have already mentioned in various parts of this work, others are covered with thorns, and others are very large, with great hollows in their trunks, where the bees make their honey with marvelous great order and concert. In most of the inhabited parts of this land, large and small trees are to be seen, which they call mole. These trees have very small leaves, with a smell like that of fennel. Their bark is possessed of such virtue that, if a man has great pain and swelling in his legs, it is removed, and the swelling is reduced, by merely soaking this bark, and washing the place several times. The small branches are very useful for cleaning the teeth. They also make a very good drink from the very small berries which this tree bears, as well as vinegar, by merely steeping the quantity required in vases of water, and putting them on the fire. After they have stood some time, the residue of the liquor is converted into wine, vinegar, or treacle, according to the manner of treating it. The Indians hold these trees in great estimation. There are also herbs of great virtue in these parts, and I will mention some which I saw myself. In the province of Quinbaya, where the city of Cali stands, they raise certain roots among the trees, which are so efficacious for purging, that it is merely necessary to take a little more than a braza in length, of the thickness of a finger, place it in a small jar of water, and drink the greater part of the water during the night, to cause the required effect, as well as rhubarb. There are also beans which have the same effect, but some praise them, while others say they do harm. In the buildings of Vilcas, one of my slave girls was very ill with certain tumors, and I saw that the Indians carried yellow flowers, which they reduced to powder by applying a light to them. By anointing her once or twice with this powder she was cured. In the province of Andahuaylas there is another herb so good for cleaning the teeth, that by rubbing them with it for an hour or two, the teeth become as white as snow. There are many other herbs in these parts, which are useful for curing men, and others which do harm, and form the poisons of which men die. Chapter 113. How there are large salt lakes and baths in this kingdom, and how the land is suited for the growth of olives and other fruits of Spain, and for some animals and birds of that country. Having concluded what I have to say concerning the founding of the new cities in Peru, it will be well to give an account of some of the most noteworthy things in the country, before I bring this first part of my work to a conclusion. I will now make mention of the great salt lakes in this country, a thing very important for the sustenance of the people. I have mentioned how there were no salt lakes throughout the government of Popayan, and how God our Lord has provided salt springs, from the water of which the people make the salt for their support. Here in Peru there are such large and fine salt lakes that they would suffice to supply all the kingdoms of Spain, France, Italy, and other parts. Near Tumbay they get large rocks of salt from water near the sea shore, which they take in ships to the port of the city of Cali, and to the Tierra Firme. In the sandy deserts, not very far from the valley of Huara, there are some large and valuable salt lakes, and great heaps of salt which are lost, for few Indians take advantage of this supply. In the mountains near the province of Hualas there are other still larger salt lakes, and half a league from the city of Cusco there are wells, where the Indians make enough salt to supply all the province. In Kuntisuyu, and in parts of the Antisuyu, there are some very large salt deposits. In short, it may be said that Peru is well supplied with salt. There are also baths in many parts of the country, and fountains of warm water, where the natives bathe. I have seen many of these, in the parts through which I have traveled. Many places in this kingdom, such as the coast valleys and the land on the banks of rivers, are very fertile, and yield wheat, maize, and barley in great quantities. There are also not a few vineyards at San Miguel, Truxillo, the city of the kings, Cusco, and Guamanga, and they are beginning to plant them in other parts, so that there is great hope of profitable vine cultivation. There are orange and pomegranate trees, and other trees brought from Spain, besides those of the country, and pulses of all sorts. In short, Peru is a grand country, and hereafter it will be still greater, for large cities have been founded, and when our age has passed away, Peru may send to other countries, wheat, meat, wool, and even silk, for there are the best situations in the world for planting mulberries. There is only one thing that has not yet been brought to this country, and that is the olive tree, which, after bread and the vine, is the most important product. It seems to me that if young plants were brought from Spain, and planted in the coast valleys, and on the banks of rivers in the mountains, there would soon be as large olive woods as there are at Axaraf de Sevilla. For if they require a warm climate it is here, if they want much water, or none, or little, all these requirements can be found here. In some places in Peru it never thunders, lightning is not seen, nor do snows fall in the coast valleys, and these are the things which damage the fruit of olive trees. When the trees are once planted, there will soon come a time when Peru will be as well supplied with oil as with everything else. No woods of oak trees have been found in Peru, but if they were planted in the Callao, in the district of Cusco, and in other parts, I believe that they would give the same result as olive trees in the coast valleys. My opinion is that the conquerors and settlers of these parts should not pass their time in fighting battles and marching in chase of each other, but in planting and sowing, which would be more profitable. I have to mention a thing here, that there is in the mountains of Peru. I allude to certain foxes, not very large, which have the property of emitting so foul and pestiferous an odor, that there is nothing with which it can be compared. If one of these creatures, by any accident, comes in contact with a lance or anything else, the evil smell remains for many days, even when the lance is well washed. I have not seen wolves, nor other mischievous animals, in any part, except the great tigers which I have mentioned as frequenting the forests of the port of Buenaventura, in the province of the city of Cali, which have killed some Spaniards, and many Indians. Ostriches have been met with beyond Charcas, and the Indians value them very highly. There is another kind of animal called huicacha, of the size and shape of a hare, except that the tail is like that of a fox. They breed in stony places, and amongst rocks, and many are killed with slings and arquebuses. They are good to eat, and the Indians make mantles of their skins, which are as soft as silk, and very valuable. There are many falcons, which would be prized in Spain. I have already said that there are two kinds of partridges, one small, and the other the size of fowls. There are the best ferrets in the world in this country. There are also certain very obscene birds, both in the coast valleys and in the mountains, called auras, which eat dead bodies, and other noisome substances. Of the same kind are the enormous condors, which almost appear like griffins, and carry off the lambs and small hoanicus in the fields. Chapter 114. How the native Indians of this kingdom were great masters of the arts of working in silver, and of building, and how they had excellent dyes for their fine cloths. From the accounts given to us by the Indians, it appears that, in ancient times, they had not the same order in their affairs as they established after they were subdued by the Incas. For verily things may be seen made by their hands with such skill, that they cause admiration to all who have any knowledge of them. And what is more curious is that they have few tools for making what they do make, and yet that they work with great skill. When this kingdom was gained by the Spaniards, they saw pieces of gold, silver, and clay welded together in such fashion that they appeared to have been born so. They also saw very curious figures and other things of silver which I do not describe, as I did not see them myself. It is sufficient to say that I have seen vases made of pieces of copper or stone, and jars, fountains, and other things richly ornamented by means of the tools they have. When they work, they make a small furnace of clay, where they put the charcoal, and they then blow the fire with small canes, instead of bellows. Besides their silver utensils, they make chains, stamped ornaments, and other things of gold. Even boys, who to look at them one would think were hardly old enough to talk, know how to make these things. Few are the things they now make in comparison with the great and rich ornaments they made in the time of the Incas. They, however, make the chaquiras, so small and accurately worked, by which they show themselves still to be eminent workers in silver. Many of these silversmiths were stationed by the Incas in the principal parts of the kingdom. These Indians also built strong foundations and grand edifices with great skill, and now they build the houses of the Spaniards, make bricks and tiles, and put large stones one on the top of the other with such exactness that the point of junction is scarcely visible. In many parts they do these things with no other tools than stones, and their own wonderful skill. I do not believe that there is any people or nation in the world who could lead irrigation channels over such rugged and difficult places as do these Indians. They have small looms for weaving their cloth, and in ancient times, when the kings Incas ruled in this kingdom, the mamacunas, who were held to be sacred, and were dedicated to the service of the temples of the sun, had no other employment than to weave very fine cloth of vicuna wool, for the lords Incas. This cloth was as fine as any they have in Spain. The dresses of the Incas consisted of shirts of this cloth, some embroidered with gold and silver work, some with emeralds and other precious stones, some with feathers of birds, and some merely with the cloth. To make these clothes they had such perfect colors, crimson, blue, yellow, and black, that in this respect they have the advantage of Spain. In the government of Popayan there is an earth with which, and with the leaves of a tree, they make a perfect black dye, but it would be wearisome to repeat all the details connected with the way they make these dyes, and it seems sufficient, therefore, to mention the principal one. Chapter 115. How there are great mines in most parts of this kingdom. The long chain of mountains, which we call Andes, commences at the Strait of Magallanes, and traverses many regions and great provinces, and we know that on the side towards the South Sea, which is the west, great riches are found in the hills and rivers, while the provinces to the eastward are considered to be poor in metals, according to the account of those who extended their conquests to the river of La Plata, and came thence to Peru by way of Potosi. They said that they heard of a country no less fertile than populous, which was a few days' journey beyond Charcas, and this proved to be no other than Peru. They saw little silver, and even that came from the district round the town of Plata. Neither did those who went on an expedition of discovery with Diego de Rojas, Felipe Gutierrez, and Nicolas de Heredia find any riches. The adelantado Don Francisco de Orellana, too, who went down the Marañón in a boat, at the time when the Captain Gonzalo Pizarro was in search of the cinnamon country, although he passed many large villages, saw little or no gold or silver. Indeed, except in the province of Bogotá, there is no wealth in these parts of the Cordillera of the Andes. But it is very different in the southern parts, where greater treasure has been found than had been seen before in the world during many ages. Yet if the gold in the provinces near the great river of Santa Martha, from the city of Popayan to the town of Mompox, had been in the power of a single lord, as it was in Peru, the wealth would have been greater than that of Cusco. In the skirts of these cordilleras they have found great mines of gold and silver, both near Antioquia, at Cartago, in the government of Popayan, and throughout the whole kingdom of Peru. If there were people to extract it, there would be gold and silver enough to last forever, For in the mountains and plains, in the valleys and in all parts, they have found gold and silver. There is also a great quantity of copper, and some iron in the mountains which descend towards the plains. In fine, there is lead in this kingdom, and all the metals which God has created, and it seems to me that if there were men to work, there would not fail to be great riches in Peru. Already so much treasure has been extracted and sent to Spain, that men never thought there could be so much.